Yo, what's up everybody? Jumping here. Today I'm going to be showing you guys all my Warlock builds in Destiny 2. I'm going to be talking about both PvP and PvE, and I'm going to be talking about every single subclass. So this video might be a little bit long because there's a lot to talk about, but I'm going to start with the Stormcaller because it is definitely the easiest one to talk about. I only really have one setup for the Stormcaller. I've tried out all the other setups, and I just don't like them as much. I definitely love the Nazarick Sin on the Stormcaller. I already made a video talking about this helmet, but I have to talk about it again because it just works so great. Now, the main thing that this helmet does is that when you get a void kill, it's going to increase your ability recharge rate. Now, that's really good. That means your grenade, your melee, and your super, and your rift. You get all your abilities back really quickly if you are getting void kills. Now, it doesn't have to be void ability kills. It can be void weapon kills. And that is where it works really well with every single subclass for the Warlock. It doesn't matter if you're a Voidwalker, a Stormcaller, or the Dawnblade. You will literally get your abilities back so much faster, especially in PvE, when you're killing enemies with a void weapon. Now, for the helmet itself, I have arc melees will recharge faster. That's really important because for the Stormcaller, the melee is so great for getting your super back and getting your grenade back and getting your melee back faster, that you definitely want to get that melee to come back as fast as possible. For the gloves, I also have arc melee will recharge faster, although sometimes I might swap it out for class abilities will recharge faster. I normally do this in PvP, and that's about it. For the chest piece, I have grenades will recharge faster. For the boots, I have grenades will recharge faster. And for the Warlock bond, I have increased armor recovery. Now, my overall split is 4 resilience and 10 recovery. I don't really like mobility, but for resilience, you definitely want, because right now the meta in PvP is the Midas multi-tool, and with 4 resilience, you can survive 1 extra Midas shot. So having 4 resilience is really important. Anything after that is kind of a waste. You don't really need it. 10 recovery is amazing. When you have 10 recovery, you will get your health back so much faster than most players, and it gives you a huge advantage in PvP. Now, for the weapons, I definitely recommend a really good Void auto rifle. I normally like to use the Prosecutor in PvE, but in PvP, I always use the Uriel's Gift. It's totally meta, and it absolutely destroys people, and normally I get most of my kills with the Uriel's Gift when I play PvP. So it's really perfect with the Nazarick Sin because I'm going to get my abilities come back faster in PvP. If you do not have the Prosecutor, you could always use the Uriel's Gift in PvE as well. That's totally fine. For the heavy, I normally use a sword like the Raid Sword. This sword is really good because it can have unlimited ammo, which is freaking great. As long as you are doing the power attack, you will always get 1 ammo back, and that allows you to do another power attack. So you pretty much have unlimited ammo, and the sword is just super good. Now, I also will use the Sins of the Past sometimes, and in PvP, I normally use the main ingredient. And the primary just doesn't really matter if you're going to use the Sin. I mean, you can use whatever primary you want, but normally I'm always just using my energy weapon or my heavy weapon because I'm trying to kill things with Void. That way I can get my abilities back faster. Now, let's go ahead and talk about the tree and what you want. Now, if you're going to play PvE, I definitely recommend the bottom tree. You could also use this in PvP as well. It does work good there, but I normally do like the top tree a little bit better for PvP, but it's all about your personal preference. The main amazing ability here is the melee. Rising Storm is so good because it's going to give you super energy, grenade energy, and melee energy. It gives you about 25% of your grenade and melee energy back after you do it, so that's actually really nice. But the main thing is you get a huge amount of your super back. And because of the Nazarick Sin, you can get your melee back really quickly, and it takes maybe like 2 or 3 melees, and you should have your super. I mean, it's really good in PvE. You will constantly have your super with this build, and of course, the Stormcaller is great for clearing out large groups of adds. It's a really great PvE build overall. All the other perks are really good. Landfall is great. Having your Rift comes back faster when you're by allies is good. And Arc Soul is amazing. Arc Soul is good in PvE, and it's great in PvP as well. Now, the top tree, I personally do like it better for PvP just for the blink, because a lot of times when you go into your Stormcaller super, you're going to get team shotted in PvP. When you have the blink, you can dodge some of those shots and get close to the enemies, and then you can just go ahead and go to town on them and just murder everyone. So I definitely do like the top tree a lot in PvP. but it's totally up to you which one you want to use. Now, I would 100% recommend the Pulse Grenade in PvE. This is also amazing in PvP as well, but sometimes I do like to use the Arc Bolt Grenade in PvP just because I like both of those grenades a lot. For the Rift, I normally always use the Healing Rift, but sometimes in PvE, I will use the Empowering Rift. If I'm doing the raid or something, then I will put this on. And for the jump, I definitely would recommend the Burst Glide. I pretty much always use the Burst Glide unless I'm playing PvP on the Voidwalker. Then I might use Blink. So that's pretty much it for the Stormcaller. That's really all I wanted to talk about. There's other setups you can do like the Crown of Tempest, but personally, I don't like that helmet because it doesn't give you your abilities back nearly as fast as the Nazarick Sen. And getting your melee ability to come back really quickly is so great just because of Rising Storm. You can get your super quick if you're melee enemies with that Rising Storm melee. It is freaking great. And I'll show some gameplay where you can see how fast you can actually get your super with this build. It's pretty crazy. Now, let's go ahead and talk about the Voidwalker. There's a couple different setups I want to talk about, and both of them are actually really freaking good. Alrighty guys, well this is going to be one of my Voidwalker builds, and this build is absolutely amazing. Now there's a lot of videos talking about this build. It is really popular right now, but I have to talk about it here because it is definitely one of the most overpowered and best Warlock setups that you can do right now in Destiny 2. And that is going to be the Devourer Winter's Guile melee build. This build is ridiculous. Now, first thing, let's talk about the tree itself. You're going to want to use the Devourer bottom tree for the Voidwalker. Now, the melee itself doesn't really matter all that much because with the second perk, you can consume your grenade, and that will grant you the Devour effect. And the third perk will allow it to be extended by killing enemies, and it's going to give you some grenade energy every time you kill something. It's really easy to get your grenade back super quick with this build because of Devour. And the final perk, which is Vortex, is definitely pretty good for the Noble Bomb itself. Now, the grenade that I recommend for this build is the Axiom Bolt. You can throw it out. It will seek out the target. You don't even need to aim it. And it's really, really nice for this build. And the Rift, I just use the Healing Rift. And for PvE, I do recommend the Burst Glide, although in PvP, if you can actually control it and get good with it, Blink is amazing. Now, this build is definitely not a PvP build. This is definitely a PvE build 100%. Now, the main thing about this setup is the Winter's Guile. These gloves are absolutely amazing because every time you melee an enemy, it's going to increase the melee damage, and that will stack up to 5 times. Once you have that 5th stack, you will start to hit for crazy damage with your melee. It will hit for like 13,000, and you can one-shot huge enemies with that. It's really, really fun. Now, it's pretty much like running around with a sword without actually using a sword. To make this build more fun, though, I recommend using a sword. And then when you run out of ammo for your sword, run around and punch everything. It is actually really, really great. And because of Devour, you will never die. Every time you kill something, you'll get all your health back, you'll get some grenade energy back, and it just works fantastic. This is definitely one of the most overpowered builds for PvE with the Warlock for sure. Now for the helmet, I use grenades will recharge faster. For the gloves, I use grenades will recharge faster. For the chest piece, I use class abilities will recharge faster. For the boots, I have increased armor recovery. And for the bond, I have increased armor recovery. My split is 1 mobility, 4 resilience, and 10 recovery. Now, because this is a PvE setup, your split really doesn't matter all that much. I wouldn't really worry about it. But one thing you could do is you could go for a lot of resilience. That way you can actually survive more and you will actually be a little bit more beefy. Because you have the Devour effect, you really don't need recovery at all. Every time you kill something, you're getting all your health back. So if you can be just a little bit more beefy, that might be nice for you, especially if you really love this build and you're having a lot of fun with it. Now, me personally, I don't care. I don't really see the point of getting new armor and upgrading it. But if this is a build that you really love to play, I would say having increased resilience might be a really good idea. Now, this build is pretty much just a PvE build. Don't recommend it for PvP. Now I'm going to switch to my other build for the Voidwalker, which does work really well in PvE and in PvP. Alrighty guys, well this is my other Voidwalker build, and this is going to be using the Nazarick Sen. Now, I already talked about this helmet and why it's so amazing, but it works so well in the Voidwalker because not only will you get your abilities to come back faster using your weapon, but you will also get it to come back faster using your abilities. So that is really, really nice. Now for the helmet, I have grenades will recharge faster. For the gloves, I have grenades will recharge faster. For the chest piece, I have class abilities will recharge faster. For the boots, I have void melee abilities will recharge faster. And for the bond, I have increased armor recovery. Now my split for this is 4 resilience and 10 recovery. This is a PvE and PvP build, so I like it for that. The weapons, pretty much the same thing as I talked about before. I like the Prosecutor in PvE, I like the Uriel's Gift in PvP. In PvE, I normally do like to use the sword, but sometimes I use the Sins of the Past. And in PvP, I like to use the main ingredient. Now for this setup, you can use either tree you want, especially in PvP. But in PvE, I really do like the top tree a lot for this particular setup. Primarily because it's so great for getting your grenade back really quickly. After you throw your grenade, you can always melee an enemy. And when you melee the enemy, you get half of your grenade energy back. And with the Nazarick Sin, you're going to get your melee back super quick and you're going to get your grenade back super quick. So you can just constantly keep spamming grenades and it's really, really good. The second perk allows you to charge up your grenade and it makes it like super powerful, especially with the Vortex Grenade. So I like this a lot. The bloom effect is really nice for making large groups of enemies explode. And the final perk, I like it a lot just because it does a crazy amount of damage and it's really, really nice. Some people don't like this perk that much and I can see why, but I personally do like it a lot. This is a really fun setup. I definitely do like it. And like I said, you can always use the Devourer tree as well with this setup. Although if you're going to play PvE, I would recommend the melee build just because it is so overpowered. Now the grenade I recommend is the Vortex Grenade just because it can be charged up and it does crazy damage. Although every single one of these grenades are good with the top tree. I definitely do like all of them. And it's the same thing with the Rift and the Jump. And that's pretty much it. I don't really need to talk about this one too much just because it's pretty much the Nazarick Sin. I already talked about it in this video and I made a video before talking about this build. But this is the build I normally do like to play in PvP and I do like to use this as well in PvE. It just depends on my mood. Alrighty guys, so now I'm going to talk about the Dawnblade and there's a lot to talk about with the Dawnblade. That is because it's really hard to make the Dawnblade work. It's a subclass that I would love to be good. But unfortunately, it's definitely the weakest for the Warlock. But I'll show you some setups that will actually make it a lot of fun to play. It's not the strongest, but it can be a lot of fun to play for sure. Alrighty guys, so this is going to be one of my Dawnblade builds. And this build is actually a lot of fun to play. And it will do crazy damage to bosses. It's definitely a boss killing build for sure. And it is kind of entertaining. Like, is it the best build in the world? Probably not. But it is fun. So let's go ahead and talk about it. The main thing you need for this is the sun bracers, which are actually kind of decent. They're not nearly as good as they were in Destiny 1. But what they do is that they will increase the duration of solar grenades. I'm pretty sure it will double the duration of the solar grenade. And the solar grenade does a lot of damage to big enemies in PvE. So I definitely do like the solar grenade a lot. The other thing that these gloves will do is that when you melee an enemy, you're going to get some grenade energy back. It's not a lot, but it does help, so that's pretty decent. Now the main tree you want to use with the sun bracers is the top tree. The bottom tree is really good primarily because of the super itself, but the top tree has one perk that I like a lot, which is Heat Rises. When you get airborne kills, it's going to restore your grenade and melee energy, and if you can kill like 4 or 5 enemies while in the air, you will fully restore your grenade, and that's the main thing. So what you can actually do is you jump in the air, and if there's a large group of enemies, you can actually throw your solar grenade at them. And if you can stay in the air as they all die, you will fully restore your solar grenade, which is actually really good. Also, casting your super will instantly refill all of your ability energy. Now what's good about that is what you can do against a boss. You can throw your solar grenade, cast your super, throw a second solar grenade, and then use your super on that boss. You will do crazy damage because of the sun bracers and the solar grenades and the super itself. You do insane DPS to large targets like a boss. We call it napalm strikes when we use this build, and it is a lot of fun to use for sure. Now the rest of the stuff here isn't the best in the world, honestly. Now one thing I will say though is that it is also really fun using Icarus Dash, because when you have your super you can actually like spam this, and that's really nice. In PvP, I think the top tree is probably better just because When you go into your super, you can actually get closer to enemies or chase them down using the airborne dash. You can escape a lot of sticky situations with the airborne dash, and it is not bad. So in PvP, I would probably recommend the top tree overall, and in PvP, I would recommend the Firebolt Grenade, not the Solar Grenade. But in PvE, 100% use the Solar Grenade. The Rift is pretty much the same as before, and the Jump is the same. And the bottom tree is good, but it's better with the super, especially in PvE. Now, let's talk about the rest of this setup. So for the helmet, I have grenades will recharge faster while using a solar subclass. For the gloves, I just have improved reload speed for kinetic weapon. For the chest piece, I have solar melee will recharge faster. For the boots, I have grenades will recharge faster. And for the Warlock bond, I have increased armor recovery. Now, my split isn't the best thing in the world. I have 1 mobility, 3 resilience, and 10 recovery. This build is meant for PvE. It's not meant for PvP, so the split really doesn't matter all that much. The weapons, it's totally up to you on what you want to use with this setup. But like I said, this is a really fun build just because of the napalm strikes and the ability to do crazy damage to bosses doing the double solar grenade and the super. You will absolutely melt them, no pun intended, but yes, you will destroy bosses with this setup, and that is really cool. Now I'm going to switch to my other setup, which is more meant for PvP, and also it is a decent setup for the Dawnblade if you want to use the bottom tree. Alrighty guys, well here's my other setup for the Dawnblade, and once again, I'm using the Nazarick Sen. Like I said before, this helmet just works great on every single one of the subclasses, and it's the same with the Dawnblade. If you can kill enemies using your void weapons, you're going to get your abilities to come back a lot faster, and that's actually really good in PvP and in PvE. The Solar Grenade is great in PvE, the Firebolt Grenade is definitely really good in PvP, so I do definitely like this setup as well. For the helmet, I have grenades will recharge faster. For the gloves, I have reduced recoil for energy weapon, primarily because I just use energy weapons with this setup. For the chest piece, I'm using solar melee will recharge faster, and for the boots, I have grenades will recharge faster with a solar subclass. And then on the bond, I have increased armor recovery. Now my split is 4 resilience and 10 recovery, so it's pretty much a pretty common theme at this point. But yeah, I mean, it's the same thing as before. It works really well. Now, there's one other setup I guess I could quickly talk about, which I'm not going to show, and that is the Starfire Protocol. Now, one thing you need to know, you do get 2 fusion grenades. I'm not a big fan of fusion grenades. I don't like them, so I normally don't like using this chest piece. It does have one really good use, though, which is if you're playing in the raid and you're going to fight the final boss, Callus, what you can actually do is, because like when you're doing damage to the boss, you can use an empowering rift on the first plate to do damage. If there's a lot of dogs floating around, you can actually throw your fusion grenade into the dogs, kill them, and then you will instantly get your rift back. So for every single one of the plates, if you just have one Warlock, that Warlock can play the Dawnblade with the Starfire Protocol, and you will have an empowering rift on every single plate to do damage to Callus. So that is good with this chest piece, but that's it. If you're thinking, well, wait a minute, what about if you throw double fusion grenade, you pop your super, and with the 1 perk Heat Rises, will you get 2 more fusion grenades? No, you do not. You just get 1 fusion grenade out of that. So that's not that good either. So overall, I'm not a big fan of the Starfire Protocol. It does have its uses in the raid, but that's about it. I'm not going to show it. I'm not really going to talk about it because I just don't like it. I don't see the point of it. Now for this setup though, I definitely would recommend the bottom tree in PvE. The bottom tree is really fun. Because of the Nazarick Sen, you will get your super back a lot faster and your abilities back a lot faster. And the bottom tree is just great for using the super, especially in PvE. Once again though, I would probably recommend the top tree in PvP just because of the dash and just other things with it. I think that you don't really need to worry about a lot of these perks in PvP. I don't see the point. But the dash is useful in PvP. And in PvP, the Firebolt Grenade is definitely what I would use. And in PvE, always use the Solar Grenade. So that's going to pretty much do it for all my Warlock builds. Now I'm going to show some gameplay. And I'm going to show like several different builds so that you can actually see how they work and how overpowered some of them can actually really be. Alrighty guys, well this is going to be the gameplay. I'm going to start with the Stormcaller with the Nazarick Sen. I really just want to show off on how quickly you can actually get your super with this build. It's really insane. I'm going to do this like little short Lost Sector, and by the end of the Lost Sector, even before I get to the boss, I'm going to have my super built up. It takes about 1 minute and 12 seconds. Now I will say that I had a little bit of super energy going into this just because I had to run to this place, but if you take away that, you can pretty much see on how quickly you can actually build your super up. And also how quickly you can get your grenade back and your melee back. I mean, it's freaking great. And the Rising Storm melee is just so good for pretty much getting your grenade energy, your melee energy, and of course your super. You can see that it gives you a huge amount of your super back every time you do the melee. And with the Nazarick Sen, you can get that melee back so quickly. It's such a fun build to play. I've always been a huge fan of the Stormcaller in both PvP and in PvE. So this is definitely the main build I like to rock for my Warlock, just because I love to just wipe out huge mobs of enemies with my Stormcaller. I mean, it's just so much fun to me. So I'm already almost at my super. One more melee should pretty much do it. Now, one thing I will say, my controller is broken right now. I'm having the problem where I can't sprint. So you're going to see that a couple times throughout this gameplay where I'm going to stop sprinting, and that is just because of my controller being broken. And right here, I'm going to show some of the Dawnblade doing the Napalm Strike, which I really should call the Orbital Napalm Strike. But yeah, man, it does crazy damage to big boss level enemies. And it's a lot of fun, that's for sure, when you can chuck double Solar Grenade and you have Sun Bracers on. So those Solar Grenades, they just last freaking so long. And then you spam your super. It's amazing. Now, the final clip here is going to be pretty much just the Devourer build using the Winter's Guile. And I think everybody, like I said, already knows about this build, but this build is really insane. The ability to just melee huge enemies and take them out in one melee is absolutely ridiculous. I want to say that when you have the 5-stack of the Warlock Sigil, you actually do more damage with your melee than you will with a sword. Now, I do like playing around with a sword on this build because I think that's actually a lot of fun too. Because you can rush in and just kill tons of enemies with the sword, and you don't have to worry about getting killed or anything like that. And then when you run out of sword ammo, you could just simply just start punching everything. Your grenade comes back so quickly as well, so you can spam your grenade at enemies. It's a lot of fun. Now, I'm pretty sure I two-shot this guy. Yeah, I two-shot that Hydra guy, and yeah, I mean, that's just ridiculous. Normally, it takes about 2 cluster bomb rockets to take that guy out. So that's pretty much a good way of thinking about how much damage that this melee does. It pretty much does the same amount of damage as a cluster bomb rocket launcher, which is just absolutely insane. But yeah, I mean, that's pretty much it. This is definitely one of the best PvE builds in the game right now, for sure. And I just love the Warlock a lot. I think the Warlock is a fantastic class in this game. Dawnblade, not so much, but the Voidwalker and the Stormcaller is just absolutely amazing. Alrighty, guys, so that's going to pretty much do it for the video. I really hope that it has helped. If it has, will you please like the video for me? Be sure to subscribe for future videos. And I really do hope that everyone has a very nice day and peace out.